There's a law older than time itself. Every stone thrown becomes a stepping stone, and every throne they tried to block your path with, fate turned it into your seat of power. That's the secret no one talks about. The universe is always balancing itself, always keeping score, even when no one is watching. For every cruel whisper, every sabotage, every silent betrayal, there is a price. And when they thought they were burying you, they were just planting a future they could never touch. They laughed, they mocked, they plotted your fall like it was a game. But what they didn't know? The game is rigged in your favor. Because when the universe selects you for growth, it doesn't matter how many try to delay your rise, they end up delaying their own peace instead. That's the irony. The traps they set for you became their own downfall. The energy they spent trying to dim your light is now the same energy haunting them every time you shine. So let them feel the shift. Let them sit in the silence they once gave you. Because this is your era, chosen one. You don't chase, you attract. You don't fight for approval, you create waves that can't be ignored. The very power that pushed you through hell is the same force now elevating you beyond reach. If you're still standing after everything they did to break you, that's not random. That's power. This kind of pain, this kind of rise, it only happens to the chosen. No one else will understand it, because it wasn't meant for them. So stay with me until the end, because what's coming next will remind you exactly why they regret ever doubting you. Number 1. Never shrink to fit their ego, outgrow the cage they built for you. There's a certain kind of person who doesn't feel powerful unless they're standing on someone else's back. And for a while, that someone was you. But not because you were weak, because you hadn't realized your own strength yet. See, they didn't need to win, they just needed you to lose. That was their entire formula, their sense of identity, built on your silence, their confidence, fed by your self-doubt. You were never the problem, you were the mirror they couldn't face, so they tried to shatter you instead. They didn't try to help you grow, they just convinced you to stay small. And they wore masks while doing it. Fake concern, backhanded advice, a soft voice wrapped around sharp words. Are you sure that's for you? I'm just looking out for you. Not everyone is meant for more. It sounded like care, but it was all control. And what they feared most was the day you'd stop asking for permission. And that day came. You started questioning their wisdom. You stopped apologizing for your potential. You peeled off the labels they stuck on you like duct tape. And when you did, their entire identity started to crack. Because the truth is, they were never powerful. They were just louder, just faster at planting fear. But once you unplugged from their illusion, you realized they weren't guiding you, they were caging you. Here's what they never saw coming. You were never the weak one. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to believe that. They fed off your hesitation, used your dreams as a backdrop for their own insecurities. But they never expected you to wake up, to rise, to refuse to play small. Now look at them, scrambling to find someone else to manipulate, someone else to drain. Because without someone beneath them, they have nothing. They don't know how to build, only how to balance on top of others. But you're done carrying people who only wanted to keep you beneath them. You've stepped out of that role. And the moment you did, the power shifted. They regret it now, but it's too late. You've evolved beyond their reach. And the irony? They could have grown too. They could have risen with you side by side, but they chose to compete instead of collaborate. They chose control over connection. And now, you're not winning because you chased revenge. You're winning because you stopped believing they were ever above you in the first place. The only thing that ever kept them higher was the version of you that hadn't yet remembered who you are. But now you know, and now they're the ones looking up. Number 2, don't be their regret. Be the proof. They can't escape. They'll never say it out loud. Most won't even admit it to themselves. But the truth is, you've become their silent regret, the ghost that follows them into every room. Not because you were loud, not because you chased validation, but because your existence proves what they tried so hard to deny. They were never better than you. You were supposed to fail. That's the version they were comfortable with, the one they could look down on. But you didn't. And now, every win of yours is a mirror, a reflection of what they could have been. If only they had done what you did. If only they had believed, pushed, sacrificed, evolved. You were handed the same broken deck they were, maybe even worse, less support, more roadblocks. But where they paused, you persisted. Where they gave up, you got sharper. Where they made excuses, you made progress. And that's what cuts them the deepest. Your journey exposes their comfort zone for what it really was, a cage disguised as caution. Now every time your name is mentioned, it stings. Not because you did anything to them, but because you represent everything they didn't do for themselves. You're not just a reminder of who you've become. You're a reminder of who they could have become if they had dared to rise like you. They had access to you. They could have learned from you, grown with you, stood beside you. But instead, they ridiculed what they couldn't understand. They dismissed your drive, your vision, your spark, until it became a wildfire they could no longer ignore. Now they watch from the sidelines, stuck in the same loop, while you've broken every cycle they said was impossible to escape. And here's the cold truth. Regret doesn't come with a reset button. They had a choice, and they chose doubt over belief, ego over support, silence over loyalty. That's not your burden to carry. That's their echo to live with. You didn't just prove them wrong, you proved what's possible when you stop waiting for permission. And that is the kind of regret that doesn't fade. It lingers, it haunts, it speaks every time your name is mentioned, and it says, you were wrong about them, and now it's too late. Number 3, stop letting them rewrite the past. The truth still has receipts. Chosen ones, success doesn't just change your life, it exposes theirs. And the moment your light became too bright to ignore, the same people who dismissed you suddenly needed a new narrative. Now they swear they always believed in you. They rewrite the past like it's theirs to edit, hoping the noise will cover up their silence. But here's the thing, you remember everything. Every ignored message, every fake smile, every door slammed in your face when you needed them most. They may have forgotten, but your memory is bulletproof. Back then, they called you delusional. They laughed at your effort, rolled their eyes at your grind. They treated your ambition like a punchline, a phase, a joke. But now they want to say they were part of the journey, that they were there from the start, like they ever lifted a finger, like they ever believed in anything but your failure. It's almost comical, because while they were busy whispering behind your back, you were writing your legacy in silence. And the irony? They need to rewrite history because the real version makes them look small, weak, jealous, and they can't stand it. But you're not here for revenge. You're not even angry. You just see clearly now. You don't need to scream the truth. They already feel it. Every time they see your name, every win you claim, it's a reminder of the version of you they never saw coming. So let them talk. Let them twist the story. The receipts exist. And real ones don't need to prove a thing, because when you're chosen, your results speak louder than their revision, and they can't erase what the universe already stamped in stone. Number 4, colon. Don't waste time competing, master it while they burn theirs. They thought time would protect them, that having a head start, louder applause, or better connections would always keep them ahead of you. In their minds, you were the underdog they'd never have to worry about. They assumed you'd always be trying to catch up, watching them, admiring them, chasing a standard they barely lived up to themselves. But here's what they didn't calculate. You weren't running their race. You were building your own lane. While they wasted time flexing for empty validation, you were in the shadows, grinding, learning, evolving. They were collecting applause. You were collecting power. And now? The clock they relied on has betrayed them. Time didn't crown them, it exposed them. Because it's not about how early you start, it's about how wisely you move. They bragged, they flaunted, they believed their momentum would last forever. But they didn't grow, they just got older. Meanwhile, you turned every second into strategy, every setback into fuel, and every delay into preparation. Now they look around and don't recognize you. You became what they never had the discipline to become. They try to catch up, but time doesn't offer refunds. The years they mocked you were the years you were stacking bricks. And now your foundation is solid, while theirs is cracking. What once made them feel superior, now makes them feel stuck. Chosen one, they thought time would freeze you in place. Instead, you became timeless. And that's the pain they'll carry now. Not just that you passed them, but that you did it quietly. And you did it right. Number 5, don't chase betrayers. Let the trash take itself out. Chosen ones, when they betrayed you, it felt like the ground cracked open. The silence after they left, deafening. You asked yourself, was I too much? Should I have held on longer? But the truth? You weren't losing them. The universe was removing them. Their betrayal wasn't a break. It was a breakthrough. At first, it hurt. Of course it did, but not because you needed them, because you trusted them. And they weaponized that trust to feed their ego, to test your worth, to slow your rise. But now, with distance and clarity, you see it for what it was, a filter, not a failure. Had they stayed, they would have poisoned the path ahead. Their presence would have been a constant drag, an anchor disguised as a companion. Their energy wasn't built to handle your transformation. You were evolving. They were clinging to comfort. That's why they had to go. What felt like abandonment was actually precision, cosmic alignment, the removal of noise, the cutting of weak links that couldn't survive the heat of your growth. Their betrayal didn't block your path, it cleared it. And once the dead weight was gone, you moved faster, stronger, more focused. You didn't just survive their exit, you activated. Now they're watching from a distance, realizing they were never the ones holding you together. In fact, they were the ones holding you back. Let them regret, let them wonder, but never forget, their betrayal wasn't your ending. It was the spark that lit your rise. And that, chosen one, was never a loss. That was the beginning of your real power. Number 6. Stop seeking validation from the visionless. They couldn't see you because they can't see themselves. They didn't ignore you because you lacked potential. They ignored you because your potential scared them. It exposed everything they weren't. When they looked at you, all they saw was someone they thought was just like them, stuck, uncertain, average. But they weren't seeing you. They were staring into the mirror of their own limitations. People like that don't recognize greatness unless it comes wrapped in gold, wearing a title, backed by applause. They need success to be pre-approved before they respect it. They don't understand quiet resilience. They can't comprehend someone grinding in silence, building in the dark, rising without needing a stage. That's why they missed you. But now they see the glow they once laughed at. Now they're watching the same energy they mocked turn into influence, impact, power. And the worst part? They had front row seats, access to the blueprint, but were too blind to recognize it. You were never invisible. You were just early, and they couldn't process someone with vision because they've never dared to have any of their own. While they played it safe, you played for legacy. While they sought validation, you became undeniable. Now they regret it, not just because you made it, but because you did it without their approval. And that's what burns the most. You were never a nobody. They were just too small to see the chosen one standing in front of them. And now that the world sees you, they're the ones who faded into the background. Number 7: Don't feed those who mocked your roots. Remember who laughed at the seed, chosen ones. They laughed, didn't they? Not because you were wrong, but because you dared to try before your greatness had a name. They saw the dirt on your hands, the silence in your seasons, the grind with no glory, and they smirked. To them, you were just a seed, buried, small, invisible. What they didn't realize was this: only those with vision can see the forest before it grows. They rolled their eyes while you were sowing. They cracked jokes while you sacrificed sleep, comfort, and stability just to water your dream. They couldn't see the roots you were building beneath the surface. No flash, no spotlight, just you, grit, and growth. But now the branches stretch farther than their envy can reach. The fruit is undeniable, success that smells like silence and looks like something they never believed you'd touch. And suddenly, they're hungry. Suddenly they remember you. They want a seat at your table, want to be part of a harvest they never helped plant. But you remember. You remember who laughed when you were just soil and sunlight. They want the fruit, but never touched the dirt. They want the reward, but feared the rain. And now, the same mouths that mocked are watering at the mouth for access. Let them watch, let them ache. Let them feel what it means to overlook something sacred. Because you, chosen one, you didn't just grow, you transformed. And now, the fruit belongs to those who believed before it blossomed. You decide who eats. And trust this, not everyone who laughed deserves a taste. Number 8, don't let pain break you. Use it to become the weapon they can't touch. They thought the pain would break you, that the rejections, the betrayals, the silent treatments would shrink you back into submission. They believed if they could humiliate you enough times, you'd finally believe you were worthless. What they didn't know is that every wound they caused wasn't weakening you, it was refining you. They weren't breaking you, they were building a weapon they couldn't control. Every insult became armor. Every rejection fueled the fire. Every time they tried to humiliate you, you walked away sharper, stronger, and 10 steps ahead. They never expected the version of you that exists now, because back then they saw pain as a cage. But you turned it into a gym. And while they were busy trying to strip you of your worth, the universe was handing you tools they'll never be strong enough to use. They created their own nightmare, a version of you that no longer breaks, bends, or begs. And now, here's the twist. They can't take any credit for it. They can't pretend they helped you grow. They weren't allies, they were obstacles. So every time they see your face, they don't just remember what they did. They remember who they helped you become, accidentally. And that's the punishment they can't escape. They hoped you'd collapse. Instead, you became a force they can't touch, a storm they can't control. You were never fragile. You were just unfinished. Now you're complete. And you're untouchable. Number 9. Stop begging for belonging. Power lives in solitude. They thought you'd break the moment they walked away. They thought the silence would swallow you, that you'd beg for their return, desperate for a seat at their table. But what they didn't understand is this. Chosen ones don't beg to belong. They become whole in solitude. For a moment, maybe they were right. You questioned yourself. You mistook their validation for value. You wondered if being alone meant being lost. But then something wild happened. You faced yourself. You sat in the quiet and let it speak. And it didn't break you. It rebuilt you. While they were running from their own shadows, you were learning to dance with yours. While they drowned in noise, you were sharpening your mind in silence. And what was once isolation became transformation. That loneliness, it became your weapon, your clarity, your throne. Because here's the truth. Belonging to people who never respected you is the fastest way to forget who you are. And once you remembered, once you stopped chasing rooms that couldn't hold your energy, you became untouchable. Now look at them, watching, regretting, wishing they still had access to the version of you they discarded. But you're not that version anymore. You're evolved. And what they don't realize is, they trained you for this. Their absence was the fire that forged your independence. They thought you'd come crawling back. Instead, you rose, alone, unshaken. And now, they need the presence they once took for granted. But you don't need them. You never did. Number 10. Don't apologize for thinking bigger. They called you crazy because they couldn't dream that loud. They didn't call you crazy because you were lost. They called you crazy because they were. Lost in comfort, trapped in limitations, bound by rules they never dared to question. Your vision wasn't too big, it just didn't fit inside the box they were living in. They mocked your goals because they didn't have the capacity to imagine beyond the life they settled for. To the blind, light looks like madness. To the small-minded, greatness feels like a threat. And the moment you started dreaming out loud, they panicked. They couldn't understand you, so they labeled you. Unrealistic. Too much. Out of touch. But that was just fear talking. Because when you're chosen, you see things others can't. You hear the future whispering before the world is ready. And that scares people who've only ever known survival. To them, elevation looks like delusion. But to you, it looked like destiny. While they laughed, you learned. While they pointed, you prepared. And now, the same people who once called you insane are secretly dissecting your every move, watching from the shadows, hoping for a seat at the table they once mocked you for building. But it's too late. You're not the punchline anymore. You're the blueprint. They couldn't recognize your greatness, not because it wasn't there, but because their minds weren't built to hold something that rare. Let them sit with their shame. You were never crazy. You were just ahead of your time. Number 11. Don't waste wisdom on closed minds. They had access and threw it away. Chosen ones, they had a front row seat to something legendary before the world even knew your name. They sat in the same room as brilliance and still couldn't see it. You offered your mind, your energy, your fire, and they treated it like background noise. Instead of learning, they laughed. Instead of absorbing your wisdom, they rolled their eyes. But now look, the same thoughts they once dismissed are being quoted by strangers. The same ideas they ignored, they're now shaping minds, building movements, leaving impact. What they had unlimited access to, others now chase like gold. And that's what burns them the most. You were right there. unguarded, real, generous with your insight. But instead of growing with you, they let envy cloud their vision. Instead of asking questions, they made jokes. Instead of supporting, they chose to compete. And now, they're stuck watching from the outside of a success story they could have been written into. But here's the cold truth. Opportunity has an expiration date. That door they once slammed, it doesn't swing open anymore. Not for them. You're not just a success. They now see you were the lesson. And missing that lesson costs them more than they'll ever admit. Because the pain of regret isn't just about what they lost. It's about knowing they had it and let it slip through their fingers. They didn't just lose you. They lost the version of themselves they could have become, if only they'd listened. Number 12, don't just survive. Become the version they can't destroy. Chosen ones, they didn't just doubt you. They targeted you. They threw shadows at your light, placed traps in your path, whispered poison behind your back, all because they couldn't stand the idea of you rising. They wanted to see you crushed, desperate, emptied of fire, because a broken version of you. That was easier to manipulate, easier to mock, easier to ignore. But they underestimated something deep within you. That fire they tried to kill. It was never given, it was built. And pressure doesn't break the chosen, it forges them. Every betrayal became your blueprint. Every rejection, a redirection, every insult, fuel. While they were laughing behind closed doors, you were upgrading in silence. And by the time they noticed, it was too late. You weren't just healed, you were untouchable. Here's the twist they never saw coming. Their attacks helped create the strongest version of you. They gave you the pain that sharpened your focus. They gave you the silence that taught you peace. They gave you every reason to stop, and you turned it into your reason to never stop again. Now, they have to live with it. They didn't just fail to break you, they built a force they can't undo. And that power, it haunts them. Because you're no longer reacting, you're commanding. You're no longer hoping, you're creating. And the version of you they tried to bury? That version became the storm that swallowed their comfort whole. They wanted control. What they created was chaos for themselves. You are not just unbroken. You are the proof that the chosen can't be touched, only tested. And you passed every test. And now, chosen one, the truth is undeniable. You were never meant to break, you were built to rise. Every stone they threw became a step, every wound became armor. They regret everything because you became everything they swore you never would. But this journey, it's still unfolding. And what's coming next will make their silence even louder. So if this message spoke to the warrior in you, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Let the world know the chosen don't just survive. We dominate, and we're only just getting started.